Now, if you are a little bit confused by the length of this video, first off, I don't blame you. I'm not used to this. But basically, this is a recording session that I did with another RC content creator named Maxmon, or Arrogant Max as he's known on the No Name RC podcast. I'll link both of their channels in the description below, and I highly recommend you check them out, especially Max's personal channel, as he has a series called From the Ground Up, where he goes really into detail with a lot of different parts of how to make an RC drive the way you want it to. Basically, what he's going to do is he's going to analyze my driving, see what I can change via setup or my driving style, and I'm going to apply that the next time I arrive at Loganville RC Complex to see whether or not I improve. Without further delay, let's get into it. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Max?
Yeah, so I am Max Mert. I'm from Finland. I race for Mayako and I study mechanical engineering at the Eastern University of Finland, LUT University. And I've sort of focused my RC career recently, not just on driving, but for designing and all that stuff as well.
All right. And if, say, like, what credentials in terms of RC have you done so far?
Yeah, so I'm a Finnish national champion. I'm like finished multiple times in like top 15, top 20 in European races, semi-finalist at the Euros. I attended RCGP the first year in 2019, and yeah, in America, I've raced twice in America. PMB in 2019, and
I'm
then
sorry about that.
DNC Open Class in 2018, and I won the Open Class in 2018 in DNC, and PMB I made the main, but I had some bad luck. I hadn't been. That was like my first time out on tracks. I think it was like a 6 month break, so it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't the best race to go to, like because the track time there isn't massive, but
There's,
it was
yeah,
a nice experience.
you got to get you got to get a lot of track time over a lot of larger tracks here in
Yeah,
America. But
yeah. The PNB
yeah,
also like that year. I think that was the year Tyler Jones won it, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, that year I was quite competitive in the qualifiers, which I was a bit surprised about. But in the end, I think I started somewhere like 10th or something. I don't know. I just remember in the qualifiers, I was somehow always matched up with Drake. I was always behind him or in front of him. That's all I remember from that weekend.
so the bottom line is, you know what you're talking about when it comes to RC.
Yeah, I mean, some could say so. I mean, there's people who say that I don't, but I personally like to say that I know quite a bit. I've
I
been
mean, shit,
racing for what 13, 14 years now. Yeah,
you
14
can't
years.
argue with results.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, the reason why I have Max here today is he's going to look over some of my recent um, running footage and basically talk shit about it for the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Tell me what I need to change in terms of driving characteristics and possibly setup if we get to that.
Mhm.
So if you like this kind of content, feel free to like and subscribe to both my channel and especially Max's and No Name RC podcast. He does really good guides, especially on his channel with what was it called, Up to Speed or something like that.
The channel is just my name, Max Mör, but I think the series I made, a 15-part series going through different setup and all that. It's called From the Ground Up.
From the ground up. There we go.
Yeah.
So from the ground up, I'll put a link in the description below for his channel and No Name RC podcast. Lefty couldn't be with us today because
Yeah.
he's mean to us. Um, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So this footage is from the time of me recording this is from yesterday at Loganville RC Complex. It's a medium by permanent track standards, it's like a medium large style track. And this time of year in Georgia, which is southeastern U.S., it's a little bit cold, so I was running as soft compound tires as I could. Do you want me to go over my setup, or do you just want to jump into it?
I mean, we can take a look and then talk about setup afterwards. But yeah, let's
Okay.
take a look first. I think that's
All
the
right.
we
Let me
get a
just.
sort of an image of what we're working with here.
All right. Hang on. Let me move this real quick so I can share screen, window. There we go. Out to stream. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and that's me right there. So let's go ahead and look it over. So for this run, this is the first run of the day. The track is a little bit, not as a little bit damp and dusty at the same time, more sandy, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my second time out on the track. And this is
Yeah.
like first round of a qualifier.
Does Ogden practice here? Some I think I've
Paul
seen him
Ogden,
practice here.
yeah, he's practiced here a couple times. Yeah, he
Yeah.
races. I've seen him a couple times also at larger events too.
Yeah. Which brand car do you drive?
I drive Associated, the new one, the B4E.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not mechanically aptitude enough to run nitro yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for most people, it's much better to start off with e-buggy, especially if you're coming from 10 scale side of things. Definitely start with e-buggy. And for most people, it's just much more fun in the beginning because you're still getting used to driving and all that.
Mm-hmm. Which,
Yeah.
as you can see, I'm not.
Yeah. So from the get go, the track does seem quite slippery, especially with, most of the pivot ball cars. There is a tendency for those cars to run quite stiff due to the really laid down shocks they have for other
Mm-hmm.
reasons. But that's one thing that I can see sort of setup wise, that, you may be struggling with a bit here. Um, but yeah, mostly it looks all right. I mean, uh, I think for the most part, it's just about getting the arc of the corners more balanced. Like a lot of times, you make the mistake of turning too much in, then you like straightening the car a bit, and then you go a bit wide after that. So also on the exit, sometimes you have the rear end sliding.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that a lot of it accounts to setup too. Like for example, here you could see the rear end just kicked out, but you can also like account for it in driving. So sort of lifting before you brake, trying to angle the car into the corner, sort of lift off the throttle a little bit earlier than you normally would, and then go on the brake and then turn the car and then go back on power, for example, in that back right corner. That's the
Mm-hmm.
type of stuff you can do when maybe the car is in the way you exactly would want it to handle, but that's the way you can get more comfortable with it. Give the car a little bit more time to settle, and you can keep the corner, you keep the speed throughout the corner. That's one thing you can definitely do, which will help you out. um, in these low speed corners, you do actually quite well. There's really not much you could do. The car does seem a little bit pushy, um, so that is something that maybe you could help yourself with. Get the front end to stick down a bit more, get it to turn a little bit better. Um, but mostly driving wise, yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. You're driving pretty calm. No extra stuff. You're just going around. Mm,
Yeah.
you seem to be having a lot of issues with the jumps. I don't. Hard to say.
Yeah.
Hard to say
Um,
from here. Is it just that you're not that used to the track, or?
it's partially that. It's also usually when I'm running on the 10 scale tracks that I'm used to. Like originally, you'll see it on some of my earlier videos. The track that I used to run at most of the time was a really small 10 scale AstroTurf track. So
Hmm.
aerial control was never really a thing it
Yeah,
wasn't a thing
okay.
I had to learn in order to be fast.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that definitely makes sense here. And then like opposite to the 10 scale car, these, especially like you're driving associated, the feeling you get, this car likes to float a lot. And 10 scale, especially on AstroTurf, it likes to be, if it's high grip AstroTurf, it likes to be in the, ground. It likes to stuck into the, like the hairs of the turf, whatever you call it.
yeah,
Kind of goes in, and it's really sort of edgy all the time. But here you have a little bit sandy track. You have quite, laid down shocks on the car naturally. It's quite stiff suspension, so the car floats a lot, and that I
yeah,
see, especially the jumps. You you sort of just go at a like. Okay, one thing I think that I just realized that you could do is, Uh, a lot of the times, what you do in these jumps is you just hold your speed. You go the same speed. You approach the jump. You don't lift. You don't brake. You don't do like you don't put more or anything.
hmm,
What that tends to do is the car tends to ride quite high. So what you want to do is, um, perhaps you put more throttle just before the jump, or if it's, like here in the front, you kind of have to brake for the jump. One thing you could do is you could just like lift at the face of the jump. That way the car naturally digs more into the jump face, and then you have more control in the air. But you go into the jumps sort of on power a bit, like you hold the power you have, so that way the car keeps its natural ride height, and it sort of bounces up more. You have less control of the car. That is
okay,
definitely one thing you could look into, especially these front jumps. So, like you can throttle down the first one, then lift and have nice dip of the second one. Because here you just sort of keep your speed up, and that's why when you do what you're doing, it throws the car further away. But especially here when it's you have a corner right after it, you want the car to shoot a little bit more up, so then you can hit the down face of the jump much easier.
okay,
So that's definitely one thing. Always power into a jump or lift or brake into a jump. That way, in the air, the car is much more in your control, and you don't have to do it aggressively. Trying to brake at the perfect moment of the jump is really hard to do. So a lot of times it's better to start with just naturally lifting at the sort of when you hit the arc of the jump. That's
all
I
right,
think the easiest step to take to get better performance in the jumps.
all right. So what I took from that is specifically with jumping. The way that I usually jump is I'll keep a consistent speed up until the face of the jump. What I
Hmm.
should be doing is either sort of letting off a little bit. Hang on, let me say for right about not here, but come on, there we go. So for like right here in this little um face right there, I should start letting off a little bit sooner, or
Yeah, so basically, for example, a jump like this straight after a corner, what you should do is you should power out of the corner and sort of go into the jump a little bit too fast, And then when you hit like kind of where your mouse is at right now, when you
mm-hmm,
hit that exact spot, then you like lift off. So that way it calms down the car just before you lift off. It, especially on e-buggy, it uh, sort of naturally drag brakes the wheels. So then when you're in the air, your car is in a natural state. But instead, what you're right now doing is you're going to the jump and holding your throttle until you're in the air. So what tends to often happen, as we saw at the beginning of the video, is when you then lift in the air, it shoots the car nose down, and that is good for most part. But when you're doing it the way you're doing, it's hard to expect how much is that's going to happen. It's in the air, the tires are rolling. If you tap the brakes, the nose is going to come really, really sharply down. So the best thing to do is calm down the car just before you lift off the jump. So you lift your throttle, you let the car compress, and that way you have more control in the air. This type of jump is generally much easier because you can just power down at the landing anyway. But especially after a corner like this, it's easy to just you power out as fast as you can, and then you lift at the right at the end of the jump, and that way you can then angle the car into the landing and then power down the landing.
Okay. And
Then
so, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Then the jumps in the front is a little bit different type of style, but um, yeah, that's basically for jumps coming out of a corner. Now, this jump is a very good
This one?
example of yeah, this jump right before the corner is a very good example of a corner where you very much benefit from this style. So, and the thing is, every single pro does this. They if they want to jump really far away, they go full power into the jump and they never lift. You know, but then they know that they will keep a certain amount of throttle in the air, or they angle the car the way they want it to. But here, when you land, you basically want to stop the car. So what you want to do is try to eat up a lot of the speed in the air, because when you land, your car is going to be out of balance anyway. So what you want to do is when you power down, if you can just wind back a tiny bit so we can see the
A little bit.
jump before it. Yeah, here.
This one,
So
right?
yeah, so here's the this is sort of an easy jump, you know. This one you can do what you're doing right now. You can go into it and then keep your speed and power down. If you want to gain a little bit of speed, what you can do is even this one you could lift a tiny bit, like very slightly, which you get a much better angle for the landing, and then you could power down the landing. So you basically, the thing is you want to spend the minimum time in the air and land at the right at the edge of the jump, but you want to make it in a way where you have most control of your car. So this jump you can do what you're doing right now, but if you want to gain a little bit of speed, you just lift right at the tip of the jump. Then
Okay.
when you power down, you can go full power between these two jumps, and then right at the face of the jump, here you should probably well okay, it's easier not to brake, because braking is really hard on jump phases, because getting the timing is really hard, even for a lot of pros. And a driver like me, oftentimes, especially in like long mains or rough tracks, it's much easier just to lift off, let the car naturally settle down at the face of the jump, and then make it. But here, the way you're doing it is you're keeping the throttle. When you land, you keep the similar amount of throttle, maybe you power a little bit, but then when you hit the last jump, you sort of lift a bit, then you power again. It's hard to see exactly from the video, but you clearly have the car a bit unsettled in the air. So what you should do is after the first jump, you power down really hard, then as you're hitting kind of where your car is exactly now, you naturally lift off the gas, and then in the air you go. You're ready to go back on the throttle a bit to get the car moving. A lot of the times, it's good to sort of be ready at the wheel, because the car can, you know, tilt to side and another. And then once you're in the air, you know where you're at. You can get prepared for the landing. You can see where you're gonna land, and that way you have the car in your control even before you land. And that's all you did, all that work in the jump phase. So
Okay.
it's like every jump has its specific way to do it. Sometimes you have to lift earlier, sometimes you lift right at the edge. But the more speed you carry, the earlier you have to lift. Sometimes you might have to go and brake, but that's like something you should practice that for sure, because it's really not that easy to do, especially for people who aren't pros, or you know. So it's a complicated thing, but just to put it into, you know, one sentence, basically power down, lift off so the car can compress, um, and then you're in the air, you're in control of the car, and then you can land the way you want it to.
Okay. So, okay, yeah. For the next part, or the next or I guess session that I had that day, this was a little, if you can see a little bit from the video itself, the
Hmm.
track is a little bit less dusty, but it's still very, I guess it's still cold and slippery. And I made two main changes to the setup of the car. Nothing having to do with fluids or anything like that. It was I moved the. Let me show you. My car is dirty as hell, so because I haven't cleaned it. But I moved this thing right here. This screw initially
Hmm.
was far forward as it could go, and I moved it to the middle to try and calm it down a little bit. And I
Hmm.
moved the. Initially I had this part of the rear turnbuckle all the way down and
Hmm.
furthest out, and I just moved it up one to try and give myself a little bit more side bite. This is mostly um, now, of course, I'm not smart enough to figure that out on my own. Uh, I was talking with a associated driver named Brian Looper, and I'll get back to him in a little bit when we talk more about setup. But oh, there we go. This is footage from that basically.
Yeah, yeah. Those two changes kind of make a good. They kind of explain the things you are feeling and probably will help you here. So yeah, especially here in the first video, you can see you oftentimes had the issue of rear end braking grip. So raising the link, you sort of gain yourself a little bit more edge on the grip. So you can drive a little bit over the limit of the grip that you previously had, but you were fine still. So that's probably what you're seeing with that change.
Okay.
Now, in terms of driving, the track definitely looks much more groomed too. So that's gonna help you here, and probably a bit higher temps. It seems like the sun is shining.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
It's still no,
Generally,
go ahead.
yeah. The jumping, I do see you do the same thing as before because you you don't know what I was gonna say here, but um, I think here you can see that when you have the grip that you have now, you seem to have much less issues with the drops. You know, you when you land, you don't have to worry about the way you land. You know, you just still have the grip. But when you do those techniques I explained before, um, that's when even at the really difficult conditions, you can manage the car quite well.
Okay. Something else I was going to ask specifically about this section right here.
Hmm.
When I'm, it seems like other, of course, comparing myself to other people. When I try and really push this like tabletop, or not really tabletop, I guess step down
Hmm.
hard, it feels like the car gets very, very unstable and tries
Hmm.
to either pull myself into one of the pipes. It doesn't really, it's
Hmm.
kind of random which way it goes. Um, I'm not sure exactly where this is more prevalent. Actually, hang on. Sorry. It might be on this lap, but you might be able to see the car get a little bit, like I said, upset because I'm trying to push it harder here. Like there. Yep.
Yeah, that is definitely one thing that it is a little bit of the car. I personally had had the same thing when I was running AE. The rear end of the car is really good on entry and corners like for example that at the end of the back straight.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something the geometry struggles with. Now what you can do to try and fix it is personally what I like to do was to move the hubs a tad bit back. So it seems a bit counterintuitive because generally moving the hubs forward gives you rear traction. But what this does is it when you move the hubs back, it gives you a little bit more support in the rear. So especially here when you're jumping down, you're in power, the rear end wants to squat a lot. So when you have that tiny bit extra support, it's gonna calm down the car every time it's tries to be a little bit squirmy or something like that.
Okay.
Then obviously I don't know what type of diff fluids you're running, but running a little bit stiffer fluids generally helps. But when you go over it, it also can hurt you here. There isn't a simple fix to this, but definitely moving the hub back can be a good help. One thing I do like to do if I'm really having issues with the car squaring up is to move the shocks more stood up. So that way the car wants to sort of stay a bit more straight, I'd say. You lose quite a bit of corner speed that way, but you have to sort of find yourself what's the compromise you want to do. Um,
So it's basically sacrificing speed for safety.
yes, exactly. That's basically the thing here is that's why you see a lot of the pros, making mistakes like that because they want to make the car as fast as possible, but then they're like at the edge of making the car lose control. And then when they go just above the limit, then that's when they lose it. So that's sort of the thing that separates. You can see pros making weird mistakes at places like that, and that's because they take the car to the absolute edge of speed, but then they sacrifice the drivability or safety.
It's why basically when someone, like I was talking again with Brian Looper, and I hear this a lot from a lot of not just pros but like just sponsor drivers in general.
Mhm.
They'll say like, look, you need to figure out how to make a car drive better for you, because if you just copy a pro setup, chances are you're not going to be good enough to drive it.
Yeah, that's 100% the deal. Most of the times, those sponsored fast guys at your track are, they aren't as good as the pros. So their cars is usually quite good to drive. And they also, know your area, know your tracks. So most of the time, these sponsor guys, they sort of have that stuff figured out. It depends on the person, obviously, but I'd say like 90% of the pros, they drive a car that, especially, you know, just person who's starting out or just drives it as a hobby, they wouldn't be able to drive uh, um, sort of comfortably. Because a lot of the times, like, let's say Ronifog, he drives a car that most of the people on the team cannot drive because he likes the rear end to be really, really soft. And what ends up happening is exactly the same thing you said that you had issues with the rear end sort of tumbling over, and then the car dives into the one pipe and the another. I personally like that type of style where I can push the rear end to the limit, and then I can, drive the corners more carefully. But I don't go as far as David goes. And that's one thing on top of the many other things that, why he goes faster than I do.
All right. So with all of that being said, let me explain what I have set up like right now. So let's go ahead and
Hmm.
pause that and stop sharing. There we go. Basically, from what I can remember exactly, I'm running the, like I said, associated B4E. So
Hmm.
in the saddle pack configuration. So the batteries are as far back as they'll go. I'm running basically kit suspension geometry, other than the links like I mentioned. So that's 45 weight in the front, 40 weight in the rear. I'm running about 26 millimeters of ride height all the way around. What else? -2 degrees of camber in the rear, 1.5 in the front, and I think anything else? Oh yeah, in the diffs. I'm running 10K in the front, 7K in the center, and 5K in the rear.
Yeah, so one thing you could do is definitely go to a thinner rear diff, because that 5K, especially when the grip goes down, um, you will get a feeling like in the first video you saw your rear end just like
It had a mind
slid
of its own.
over. Yeah. So definitely go to a thinner rear diff, because those the gears that come as stock, they are quite big sized. So when you compare it to other cars, for example, my Akko has very small tooth gears. So I'm running, I think, 10K, 15K, 10K. But for me, the diff gears are different, so you have to run different oils, and also the car is very different. So for associated the stock gears, I'd suggest going like, I think 10 is good in the front, 7 is good in the center, but go to 3 in the rear. That'll help you a little bit um, exiting those slow corners. Now, what you want to do is lower the rear arm on the pins. So you have the pins on the inside. You take them as low as you can on the stock car. That way, you get a little bit more, trust on the rear end. You can also put them wide. So what I would do is go all the way wide on both of them and all the way down on both of them, the C and D blocks on the rear arm. So basically, lower the arm, put it as wide as you can. That way, you gain a little bit more trust in the rear. It softens the car up a bit, but it still creates you that tiny bit more grip. I personally ran associated before, so I did this myself always, and everyone I suggested this to, they liked it. That's definitely one thing to do. Um, Other than that, the stock setup is quite good. Um, the new car, the B4E, the front end does tend to be a little bit more sensitive on the center than the old car used to be. So, especially when I said, you had those moments where you turned in, then you sort of hesitated, then you went straight, and then you turned again. Those moments, it's a bit more difficult to solve, but I think one good way is to have less kick up, so raise the arm on the B block.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that way you can have a little bit more, dull feeling on the front end. You get, especially in high speed, you can trust the front end will turn, but it will be a little bit more dull feeling on it. When you have more kick up, you'll have quite sharp turning, and yeah, that is it. On high grip, it goes actually the opposite. So on high grip, you're having more kick up. It might be not as good, but on tracks like this, having a low kick up would help you. But definitely, number one thing is lower the rear arm, and I think that will help you a lot in those low speed accelerations, which from the video it looked like you struggle a bit with.
Yeah, especially when I'm specifically this corner right here. Hang on, you're
Yeah,
not. Yeah, you're not. Let me open that back up. Uh, this corner right there.
yes, yes,
Um, like that happened a lot more in the first round, but happened also in the second round as well. But also I forgot the tires that I was running
oh
in
yeah,
the first round. They're basically whole shot ripoffs. They're pro circuits. I have them right here. Pro circuits, claymores. I think claymores. They're called, and they're
yeah.
basically whole shot ripoffs.
Yeah, for most of the time, running a pin tire like that is the safe option. You might be quicker with another tire, but the pin tire like that on surface like this is quite a safe option. Especially when it's low me, it's low grip. That type of tires are good, and sometimes it might be better actually to run a stiffer compound than the softer one, because especially that thing you said about, high speed, the car started to squirm around. When you're running soft tires, that tends to happen easier. In this case, it probably was cold enough where that wasn't part of the issue, but especially when it's hotter weather, you have the grips come up. Sometimes a stiffer tire is more predictable.
Okay. And okay, so running a yeah, that kind of makes sense because I remember that happening a lot with 10 scale when I was running really soft tires on clay tracks. They just became really unstable, especially my
Hmm.
techno. But and that leads me, well, techno, that leads me to my next point, or my next question. Brian Looper brought my attention to this, of the question of reversing the diffs or the diff cases in the front and rear diff. So
Hmm.
basically, do you already know about it, or should I try to elaborate?
Yeah, I understand the you'd basically put the diffs on the other side of the case and then you reverse the engine,
Mhm.
if I understand you correct. Yeah.
Yeah, Associated
So
doesn't give you the option to, so they take a Dremel and drill out another thing.
yeah, you can. There's just a little knob in the gearbox, and you can easily do that. But personally, I don't see it having that big of a difference, especially when the engine is or the drivetrain is centered. When you're driving a car like Kyosho, Mugen, talking e-buggy here, Kyosho, Mugen, TLR, these cars have it the way where the drivetrain is actually a little bit like the drive shafts go in an angle like this. Now, a lot of other cars like HB, Techno, Mayako, e-buggy, well, that's not out yet actually, but A is one
You're
of
not
them.
supposed to say that.
They
It's not out yet.
they have the drive shaft centered. So basically, you have the center line, you have the center drive shaft at exactly center point of the car, and then the engines to the side. So here, basically, you just you will always have it spinning the opposite direction to the drivetrain. So it doesn't really matter which way it's spinning. I guess they could be some changes with it, but it's very minor. It shouldn't be anything too specific.
Okay.
But when the drivetrain is not centered, then I haven't personally studied this, but there should be a bigger change. I haven't tried this myself, but generally mm, a lot of these cars have it either way, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been a noticeable difference. But yeah, I would have to try this out to give like a definitive answer. It sounds interesting, but I don't think it's something magical.
Okay. Because again, going back to what he told me, the idea was, or at least the effect that he saw, that he said it had, was when you ran the diffs in the standard configuration, the car would become more floaty under speed or under load. And with them reversed, it seemed like that was less of an effect.
Yeah. Mm, so let me think. Mm, so it would rotate from the rear of the car. It would rotate anti-clockwise, uh, as stock, and then he would flip it to clockwise. Mm, yeah, I could see that happening. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that is um, absolutely going to happen, but I could see that happening because you're effectively you're effectively trying to twist the chassis in another direction. And if you would flip the diffs, you would twist the chassis so that it would go a little bit down. It shouldn't be a noticeable difference. Um, that would be my estimation, but it it at least it would work that way if it would work.
Okay. I'm not saying I'm gonna give it a shot, at least not yet, but it's good to know that there's at least some credence to that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say. I would have to test it. I would have to do some calculations of the issue, but there, effectively, all you're doing is the engine is trying to, like, right, the stock version, the engine and the center drive shaft try to force each other like this. So that's the motion they're doing. And when you flip it, they're gonna force each other like this.
Okay.
So that's the force they put on the chassis. So they're trying to twist the chassis in that way. But when the drive line is centered, I don't think there would be at least a noticeable benefit to it. Um, I mean, or if there is, it would be only turning one way and going on power, not both ways.
Yeah. All right. So with that being said, I would show you how the mains went, but I'm not for two reasons. One is bigger than the other. One, I got fucking clapped, so and I need to boost my ego and not show that. Secondly, I wasn't recording.
Okay, okay. Yeah, but I
So
think I think those videos. I think the jumping thing is definitely something you should take next time you go out. Like, focus on that, and it's not gonna come immediately. It's something you need to get used to. For me and for drivers who are like more used to it, it's sort of a habit. It's something we just do, and but in the beginning you sort of have to pay attention to it and do that. That's something I see a lot of hobbyists and people who are not that experienced do, is they go into the jumps, that they hold the throttle in the air, they lift, and then the car goes nose down. So you want to have the car in your control in the air, and that's why you lift at the face of the jump, not in the air.
okay. All right. Is there anything else you want to say, like just last minute tips or anything like that?
Um,
Because I know it's
nothing
late
comes
for
to
you.
nothing comes to mind right now. I've been testing a whole lot of stuff with my 10 scale card today. So lots of
Ooh,
setup
why go
things in my
10
mind, but
scales?
maybe. I mean, currently I'm driving an associated, but I'm testing stuff out and seeing if there's some things to be improved, and perhaps if there's enough, there might be a Mayako 10 scale one day. But that's still far away if it is a thing to come true.
I know
Um,
I know Joseph already doesn't like e-buggy or truggy, so
yeah, Truggy he absolutely hates.
oh.
I'm not the biggest Truggy fan myself. But I do like, especially Tool Drive 10 scale. It's an interesting platform. It's the only sort of major tool drive category, so that definitely is why it's interesting. It's a very
Yeah.
different beast to a four-wheel drive car.
I am going to do a video on well, not specifically truggy, but I'll mention why I like it, but
Mhm.
um I it's a long-winded explanation, so I'm not going to do it here. Again, it's late for you. What time is it like for you? Like 10 or something like that?
It's 9 p.m., so not that bad.
Oh, well, it is a Sunday and tomorrow's Monday, and you got to work. So,
Yeah, gotta go to school. Have a few meetings, and then hopefully I get to run more next week. I haven't been able to run. We just got our track built here, and
what
yeah.
track is it called? So people will know what it is.
Well, this is something you probably won't be able to write down, but it's Etelä-Karjalan pienoisautoilijat. So yeah,
Bless
that's a
you.
Finnish name. Yeah. Yeah, it's basically, it means it's the province, or I guess province, of this area. This area's club, biggest club, and so that's what it's called. And we have finally opened a track again here. I just moved in here a year ago to study at the university, so
That's good.
trying to get RC rolling in this area of Finland as well.
Yeah, Georgia. I don't know what it is, man. Georgia tracks here are cursed. Like,
Yeah.
when I got originally, I started racing back in 2012 with touring cars. Uh, that track closed down. That was in like the North Atlanta area. Um, that track closed down. Then by the time I got back into it, I think like 3 or 4 tracks had opened and closed between like 2013 and 2017.
Yeah,
And even
yeah.
recently,
There's a lot of tracks, especially in America. The tracks open and close. Here in Europe, it's a little bit different because we have clubs. It's not like hobby shops and an owner. It's like people gather around and then they make a club and it holds it. So there's a little bit more longevity. But
hmm,
especially last time I was in America, probably half the tracks I went to practice on are all closed now. So
yeah, which is makes it nice when tracks actually last. Like I'm planning to go down
Mhm.
to Phil Hurd eventually, and I think that track's been open since like the 1990s,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is, if you want to feel old, was 30 years ago.
Yeah, that was, yeah. I'm born in 2000, so
Really?
that, yeah.
Shit, you're same age as me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming around. Thanks for allowing me to waste your time. And I will definitely try and put those tips into practice. And you'll see the results of that whenever Loganville decides to race again.
Yeah. All right. Let me know how it goes. I want to
I will.
see. I want to see if my tips help you.
All right. Also, if anyone in the comment section wants to talk shit, um, I won't listen.
Yeah, you can come to Non MRC podcast and you can talk shit there, or my channel. I think a lot of people like who know about me don't know I have actually a channel and have done those videos, and
Well,
people always find out about it. But
I
definitely
remember.
go,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, definitely go check out on there because it's more in depth setup stuff, but it's good things and interesting things for everyone.
He did the impossible. I can attest he did the impossible and actually made Roll Center make some fucking sense.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
still
that
don't
was
do it because
that.
I don't mess with witchcraft, but it makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. For that was one that I've gotten a lot of people appreciate that video a lot. My favorite one is the aerodynamics one because that was sort of a history dive for me. I go through a lot of the history of RC, how the bodies have developed. I do it in my own way, being well. Keenan calls me arrogant Max, so
I've heard that
that
before.
if that's my nickname, you can guess how the way is. But it's an interesting topic, and then it's a three-part. The aerodynamic one is a three-parter, so I get some
Okay.
full scale, get some RC, and definitely that was my personal favorite of the three because that's something that RC doesn't really have. Roll centers everyone talks about. Most people just don't understand them or know how it works, but yeah, everyone talks about them. So
Yeah. So once again, I'm gonna put his channel in the description and probably in a pinned comment. So definitely check it out and start uploading again, Max. Please.
yeah, I
We need
need
more
to do
shit.
that. I need to do that.
Last
It's been a
upload
while.
was how long ago? Like 6 or 7 months?
No, it's probably more than that. It was. I don't think I've uploaded in all of 2022, so it's been more than
Shit.
a year. But
Damn.
I'll probably do some more videos now that I'm have like winter is a good time to do YouTube because it's not as busy. The summer is bad because then you're like racing every day. Like I'm an 8 scale racer at heart, and we have about a foot of snow out there, so no 8 scale for a while. As soon
What's
as it
snow?
melts, yeah, yeah. Probably for living in Georgia, you probably don't have that as often.
Yeah.
We have what 6 7 months of snow every year. So
Yeah. I remember seeing a couple of tracks in Europe that ran with like snow. I'm like, what the hell are they doing?
yeah, but those are usually just one-offs. Practicing in snow is just everything
Yeah.
goes to all your bearings are gone, everything rusts up, and it's
Mm,
cold. It's really cold. So,
all right.
but it's fun.
Well,
It's fun to do once in a while.
yeah. Well, once again, thanks, Max, for coming on and giving me some words of encouragement and talking shit about my driving. So, yeah, hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you too, man.
So, if you made it this far or just skipped to this part of the video, first off, I have to say thank you for watching. Secondly, like I said a couple times during the recording, and at the beginning of this video, I highly recommend you check out both No Name RC Podcast and especially Max's personal channel if you want to get better. Also, if you want to support me another way, you can support my Patreon, where I post updates onto when I'm going to upload, what they're going to be about, and if you're in the higher qualifiers, or top qualifiers, or A main tiers, you can get some stickers. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank my patrons Micah Williams, RC World Discord server, Casey Nix, Ben Reeves, Dave Armstrong, Ryan Lamb, Joe Jenkins, The Mailman 110, Brian Lofton, Rob Bedingfield, Caden Merks, and especially Morrison Wad. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.